What's going on, beautiful people? What's going on? Hopping on real quick because I'm trying to stick with this. I might not have that much time to read, so I'm just going to get right into it. Thank you for coming and supporting Reading with Jam. We are reading Real Artists Don't Starve by Goins. So let's get into it. We are reading Chapter 7 today. Chapter 7. I hope you guys can hear me okay. Chapter 7. Collaborate with others. The starving artist works alone. The thriving artist collaborates with others. Most any significant creative endeavor calls for accomplices. Philippe Petit. When someone asked C.S. Lewis if he had influenced J.R.R. Tolkien, his friend and world-famous author of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, he laughed. No one ever influenced Tolkien, he said. You might as well try to influence a Bandersnatch. A Bandersnatch is a mythical creature that appears in Through the Looking Glass. It's an irritable monster, not a creature you'd want to tangle with, and certainly not one you could easily influence. So, when he said this, people took Lewis at his word. Surely Tolkien was a writer who was stuck in his ways, with his invented languages and made-up mythology, a true own genius. And for years, that's just what people believed. No one ever influenced Tolkien. But that's not the whole story. C.S. Lewis did influence Tolkien in some powerful ways, and he wasn't the only one. There was a group of them, Diana Glyer said, 19 men, and they got together once or twice a week for about 17 years. And in those meetings, there was a special kind of magic that happened. Glyer teaches English at Azusa Pacific University and has dedicated much of her career to the study of the Inklings, the literary group that included J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and their friends. One afternoon, Professor Glyer told me how they met for decades, once a week over tea and pipe smoke. They read their works in progress to one another, she said, and they stayed up late into the night giving each other critiques. And it is in this forge of friendship and engagement that some of the great works that we love were created. They're not that different, I guess, from a lot of college students talking about what they were working on and then supporting, helping, and encouraging and challenging each other in the midst of it. But for a long time, many people had no idea that Inklings were influencing each other's work in such profound ways. When Glyer read that Bandersnatch quote for the first time in high school, it bothered her. How could these guys interact, she recalled thinking, talk with each other, go over works in progress, rough drafts of their work together, and to have that happen in conversation for there not to be influence? And so began a decades-long dive into the world of the Inklings, exploring how this community of writers influenced some of the greatest works of literature of the 20th century. Among the many examples Professor Glyer cited of how these men influenced each other's work, one in particular stood out. After the unexpected success of The Hobbit, J.R.R. Tolkien's publisher asked him to write another novel. As he began writing what was then called The New Hobbit, he got stuck only a few chapters in. One day, he asked his friend C.S. Lewis to lunch and admitted to feeling bored with the project. I don't know what to do, Tolkien said. I think I'm done. The problem, Lewis replied, is that hobbits are only interesting when they're in un-hobbit-like situations. That was all he needed to say. So, Glyer explained, because of one lunch with a buddy, the story where Tolkien was basically done and directionless. One comment opens up the vista and gives us what we now know as this wonderful, rich, epic story, The Lord of the Rings. I think that's pretty strong evidence of influence. With one little comment, C.S. Lewis changed the direction of what will become his friend's greatest work. As Lewis himself once wrote, the next best thing to being wise oneself is to live in a circle of those who are. The same, it seems, can be said for being creative. We don't do our best work alone. We do it by collaborating with others. The rule of collaboration. Beyonce's sixth studio album, Lemonade, was released on April 23, 2016, and credited 72 writers. When people learned about this, there was significant public backlash. One person on Twitter wrote, "Is this the time of year where we call Beyonce a musical genius, even though she has 50 to 100 writers and producers for each album?" Another said, Beyonce has 15 writers on one of her songs, but she's a genius, they say. This raises an important question. Do geniuses work alone? The implication in these comments is yes. We often believe groundbreaking creative work happens in isolation. A remote cabin in the woods, a secluded laboratory out in the middle of nowhere, a music studio in some dilapidated building in the inner city. But is this the way creativity really works? We hold in our minds a certain picture of a professional artist as a lone creator, some solitary genius who executes a vision all by himself, slaving away at the work with only his thoughts and brilliance to keep him company. But this is a gross misunderstanding of how real artists get their work done. As creativity researcher Keith Sawyer says, you cannot be creative alone. Isolated individuals are not creative. That's not how creativity happens. When fans discovered how many collaborators Beyonce had, the overall sentiment was that she was getting more credit than she deserved. Why? Because she didn't write those songs all by herself. This is not an uncommon reaction. When we realize our favorite author or filmmaker didn't create their masterwork alone, we are disappointed, maybe even disillusioned. There's something about the story of the solitary genius we want to cling to, however misguided it may be. That's a really nice story, Diana Glyer said, but such a picture of genius robs writers and other creatives of the possibility of writing the way that writing or creating normally takes place, which is in community. Kanye West's The Life of Pablo credits more than 100 writers. Rihanna's Anti credits more than 30. Are these individuals not real artists? If we allow ourselves to accept the new definition of artist, not as a lone genius, but as a visionary who brings people and resources together, this creates opportunities for our work to flourish. The new Renaissance is not about working in isolation. It's about finding more ways to collaborate with other, like-minded creatives. Our success is closely related to our ability to work well with others. This is the rule of collaboration, which says genius happens in groups. Starving artists work alone, but thriving artists collaborate with others. Genius happens in groups. Creative output is a slog that is often slower and more grueling than we would like, and at times can feel discouraging. The best artists, or the smart ones at least, tend to involve other people because, as Diana Glyer told me, the life of an artist, any kind of creator, is fraught with discouragement. You need people to correct your path. Your greatest work will not come from just you. In my interviews with hundreds of working creatives, I discovered that many professional artists do not work alone. Yes, they may retreat to a solitary location to finish a book or record an album, but their work is always refined by community. Many of the most significant creative breakthroughs in history were not inventions by individuals. They were the result of a small group of people working together. These creations came about thanks to what Michael Farrell calls collaborative circles. In his research, Farrell credits such groups for everything from the invention of psychotherapy to the birth of French Impressionism. Genius, he argues, tends to happen in community, not isolation. This was true of J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and their group of writers, and is true for us today. As we begin to grasp the importance of relationships in creative work, we must address the question, what do we do with these connections? We use them. Not in an exploitative way, but in a collaborative way. A certain kind of magic is how Diane Glyer described the events at those late-night meetings at Oxford University, where the Inklings met. These writers were influential because they understood the power of collaboration. Creativity is not a solitary invention, but a collaborative creation. Community offers opportunities for creative work to thrive, and that is the kind of magic we can all create. I'm going to stop here for tonight, guys. We will pick up tomorrow or the next day, but in the next episode we will conclude chapter 7 of Real Artists Don't Starve. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you all are staying safe, and yeah, I'm gonna save my thoughts about the chapter probably when I finish it. But thank you guys again. I'm just trying to show up. But yeah, we will finish chapter 7 tomorrow. Yeah. All right. Have a good night. Peace.